The fork was still warm when I sat back down. That's how fast it all happened. 9 minutes. Maybe 10. I stepped outside to answer a phone call. Something stupid about a misdelivered package from a place I didn't even order from. I remember telling the delivery guy, I don't even own a blender, while staring up at the sky, completely unaware that my life was detonating just a few feet away from me. When I returned, the dining room felt wrong. Not empty, not chaotic, just wrong. The lights hadn't changed. The music still played from Raymond's old record player in the corner. The scent of garlic and cheap Pinot Noir still hung in the air. But she, Valerie, was gone. And the chair she had been sitting in, pulled back, tilted. Her napkin was still crumpled beside her plate. Her half-eaten chicken marsala stared at me like it knew something I didn't. There were lipstick marks on her wine glass. Her purse was gone. No one else noticed. They kept talking about mortgage rates and Netflix shows. No one blinked. No one said, "Hey, where'd Val go?" So I asked, "Has anyone seen Valerie?" Shrugs. Shaking heads. Someone made a joke I didn't hear. I laughed out of habit. Then I saw it. Her phone. She never left it behind. Ever. That phone might as well have been fused to her hand. She once took it into the shower in a Ziploc bag because she was waiting on a text from her sister. So why was it here now? Face down. Silent. I picked it up. I wish I hadn't. There were no notifications. No messages. Just one open tab, the camera app. And on the screen, frozen mid-frame, was a blurry image of her reflection in a mirror. And someone else behind her. A man. Smiling. His hand was on her waist. The background? Not the kitchen. Not the hallway. Not anywhere in the house. It was the garage. Raymond's garage. Where guests weren't supposed to go. Where the door was always kept locked. Unless you had the key. Unless you were invited. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking. All I know is I ended up at the hallway door, staring at a narrow passage lit by a single bare bulb, the kind that flickers just enough to make you question your sanity. And that's when I heard it. A sound I can't unhear. Her laugh. Not the laugh she gives me when I try to be funny. It was deeper, warmer, like she was showing someone a part of herself I hadn't seen in years. And then a thud. Soft. Rhythmic. The kind of sound that makes your stomach turn before your brain can catch up. I opened the door. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. And what I saw? It wasn't just betrayal. It was performance. It wasn't what I expected. Not exactly. I didn't walk in on them mid-act, if that's what you're thinking. I think some part of me expected that, almost braced for it, like ripping off a bandage and hoping the worst version of the truth would somehow hurt less if I saw it all at once. But no, what I saw was worse. Valerie was standing near Raymond's dusty workbench, facing away from the door. Her back was arched just slightly, her hands resting behind her on the edge of the counter like she was posing, but not for me. Her hair was down now. She'd had it clipped up all night. I remember that. She always clips it up when she doesn't want me to touch her neck. I used to think that meant she had a headache. Now, I don't know what to think. The man, I still didn't know his name at that point, was standing close. Really close. One arm leaned against the wall above her shoulder, the other tracing some invisible line down the edge of her dress. His head tilted forward like he was whispering something only for her. She laughed, again, that same warm, unrecognizable laugh. She sounded 20 in that moment. Younger, freer, detached from anything resembling commitment, marriage me. I didn't say a word. Not at first. My presence was invisible to them. I stood there in the doorway, holding her phone like an idiot, watching this live performance unfold. It was like watching someone else's wife. Someone else's life. And then I noticed it. On the wall behind them, hung up carelessly on a rusted nail, was Valerie's cardigan, my birthday gift to her last year. A handmade thing from a trip to Vermont, stupid expensive, embroidered on the sleeve with the date we met. She said she loved it. Said she'd never wear anything else that fall. Now it was part of a backdrop in someone else's movie. I cleared my throat. Not loudly. Just enough to pierce the moment. They both turned. The man didn't flinch. He didn't even look guilty. He just sort of stared at me, expression flat, like I was interrupting something mildly inconvenient. A phone call, maybe, or a late lunch. Valerie, on the other hand, blinked like she'd just been pulled out of a dream. And for a split second, I swear she looked afraid. Not afraid of me. Afraid of what she'd just done. "Ben," she said, and I'll never forget the way my name sounded coming out of her mouth. Like she was testing it. Like she had to remember who I was. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just handed her the phone. You forgot this, I said. My voice cracked in the middle of it. Pathetic. She didn't take it at first. Just stared at it like it might explode in her hand. I ended up setting it on the workbench beside her, right next to a red Solo cup filled with half-melted ice and a slice of lime. She never drinks lime. The man finally spoke. You good, bro? Bro. That single word hit me harder than any fist ever could. I turned and walked out. I didn't wait for her to explain. I didn't want to hear it. Not then. But the worst part? The part that kept me up all night? She didn't follow me. I don't remember walking back through the house. I must have passed people, smiled maybe, said something forgettable to avoid looking suspicious. But it's all a blur. The only clear memory I have is the sound of my car door slamming shut. Not angry, just final. Like it was the last page in a book I didn't know I'd been reading. The keys trembled in my hand as I turned the ignition. Not because I was angry. That would have made sense. But because I felt absolutely nothing. No tears. No shaking fists. No shattered windshield or screaming into the night. Just silence. A kind of emotional flatline. I sat there in the dark, staring at my own reflection in the windshield, wondering what kind of idiot wears a pale yellow sweater to a dinner party where his marriage will disintegrate. My phone buzzed. A text from her. 3 words. Can we talk? I didn't reply. I watched the screen until it dimmed and vanished into black. The question echoed in my head, louder than the music I didn't bother turning on. Can we talk? Talk about what? About how she melted into another man's touch like it was her second skin. About how her mouth curved into that intimate little smile she used to reserve for me. About how she never once looked back as I walked away. I drove. Not home. I didn't want to be there. Didn't want to walk into our shared apartment, see the stupid, live, laugh, love print she bought on sale from Etsy, or the 2 mugs in the sink from our morning coffee. I didn't want to smell her shampoo still lingering on the pillow I never move. I didn't want the ghost of that garage scene playing in my head every time I blinked. So I just drove. For hours. Down roads I didn't recognize, through neighborhoods that looked like someone else's life. I stopped once at a gas station around midnight and stared at a row of energy drinks until a clerk asked if I was okay. I said yes. I lied. I paid for a bottle of water I didn't want and sat in my car in the far corner of the lot, pretending like I was waiting for someone. In a way, I guess I was. Maybe I was hoping she'd call again. That she'd try harder. That she'd say something more than "Can we talk?" That she'd confess. Cry. Apologize. Beg. Something. Anything to prove I wasn't the only one who felt the earth shift under my feet. But she didn't. No second text. No calls. Not that night. I ended up at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. Sat in a booth by the window. Ordered pancakes at 2:13 a.m. and stared at the empty seat across from me. The one she usually took without asking, because she hated the side with the draft from the vent. The waitress must have picked up on something, because she didn't even ask if I wanted syrup. Just brought it, quietly, and left the check upside down. I didn't eat. Just sat there until the sun started to rise, casting pale orange streaks across the Formica tabletop. The world was waking up, like nothing had happened. Like my life hadn't quietly imploded in a stranger's garage. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 5 more texts. None from her. All from people who were at that dinner. Everything okay? You left fast. Valerie's looking for you. But she wasn't. Not really. Because if she were, she'd be here. And she wasn't. I made it home around 6:40 a.m. The birds were chirping like idiots. The streets smelled faintly of dew and trash day. And the world looked too normal for what I was carrying inside me. I didn't sneak in. I didn't tiptoe like some guilty teenager. I walked through the front door like I paid the mortgage, because I do. The living room was spotless, unnaturally so. Shoes aligned perfectly by the mat. Throw pillows arranged like a staged photo. Our diffuser was on, lazily pushing lavender oil into the air, her attempt at morning peace. I hated how clean it was. The order of it. It made everything feel fake, like we were actors coming back to a set. She was in the kitchen, hair still styled, still in that dress. The one with the slit up the side she swore was just for fun. No shoes, though. Barefoot, standing there making eggs like this was any other Sunday. The audacity of that image would have been funny if it weren't so nauseating. She turned when she heard the door, spatula in hand, like some parody of a housewife from the 50s. Her expression flickered. Not guilt, not sorrow, but calculation. She was measuring me, trying to decide who I'd be this morning. The screaming husband? The broken puppy? The man who saw too much? Ben, she said soft. Hey, you left last night. I didn't know where you went. She was already lying. I didn't respond. I walked past her into the hallway, set my keys down, placed my wallet in the dish. Routine. Mechanical. She followed, still holding the spatula like it offered her protection. I tried texting. I was worried, she added, placing a plate of eggs down on the table like I might actually sit and eat. It was just talking, Ben. I swear. He was drunk. I didn't even realize how close he was leaning. Still lying. I sat down across from her, but didn't touch the food. You kissed him, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. It was steady, too steady. The kind of calm that happens before something terrible. Her eyes widened for a second, then narrowed. What? No, I didn't. What are you talking about? Who told you that? No one. I saw it. There it was, that crack. A split-second moment where her mouth opened like she might confess, or apologize, or say literally anything real. But then it vanished. She blinked and reset her face, switching into some autopilot version of herself. It wasn't like that, she said. He was just being stupid. I pushed him away. I was standing there. You laughed. You let him touch you. Her nostrils flared. Not from shame. From frustration. What were you doing spying on me in the garage, Ben? That's creepy. And just like that, she flipped the script. I was no longer the man she betrayed. I was the intruder. The one who had done something wrong. I wanted to yell, but I couldn't. I wanted to grab my keys, throw the eggs against the wall, break something just to feel real again. But instead, I just sat there, staring at the woman who once cried in my arms after her father's funeral, who once whispered, "You're my home," when we were broke and in love and eating noodles on the floor of our first apartment. She sat down, too, across from me, not crying, not apologizing, just watching. I don't want to fight, she said finally. This is a misunderstanding. And if you're going to twist everything into something it's not, I don't know how we fix that. Fix that. Like our marriage was a broken drawer she could slap some duct tape on. I leaned back, laughed, a hollow, exhausted kind of laugh. Then tell me the truth. Say it. Say what really happened. She looked down at her plate, picked up her fork, cut into the egg she made. And while she chewed, she said something that made my entire chest cave in. It didn't mean anything, Ben. And there it was. The truth slipped in like a garnish. Not denial. Not an apology. Just a quiet admission. And the cruelest kind. The kind that reduces your pain to a minor inconvenience in someone else's evening. I stood up. I didn't know what I was about to do, but I knew I couldn't breathe in that house another second. That's when my phone buzzed. I expected it to be another hollow, "I'm sorry" text from her. But it wasn't. It was from Raymond. The message said, "You need to come to the hospital. There was an accident. It's about him." My stomach dropped. I turned to her. "It's Ethan," I said. Something happened. For the first time that morning, her face went white. Not worried for me. Not worried for us. Worried for him. We didn't speak during the drive. She sat stiffly in the passenger seat, hands in her lap, eyes on the road ahead, but not really seeing it. I don't think either of us had ever been that silent together before. It wasn't the kind of silence that begs for someone to break it. It was hostile, like two people wearing masks, waiting to see who'd flinch first. I didn't ask if she wanted to come. Part of me hoped she'd refuse, that she'd stay home and sulk, or run off and cry in the bathroom like she used to after her mom called. But she didn't. The second I said, "Hospital," she grabbed her purse and followed me out the door like it was muscle memory. Maybe that's what she was counting on. Maybe she thought this little performance of being the concerned wife would smooth things over. But I was watching, and I saw her fingers trembling on her thigh. Not for me. Not for us. For him. Raymond met us outside the ER. He looked wrecked. Pale, tired, with a hospital bracelet still dangling from his wrist like he'd accidentally been admitted himself. He pulled me aside, away from her, and that's when I noticed she didn't even ask about Ethan. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't ask if he was okay. She just stood near the curb, biting her nail, staring at the glass doors like they were about to open and bring her answers. Raymond's voice was low, almost like he was afraid she'd hear through the concrete. "He got jumped," he said. "It wasn't random. The cops are here. They want to talk to you." To me, I blinked. "Why?" Raymond hesitated. "Because someone gave them your name." I felt like I'd been slapped. He must have seen my confusion because he shook his head quickly. I told them there's no way it was you. But someone, I don't know who, told the cops you were acting weird at the party, that you left angry, that you and Valerie had a fight earlier in the week. My stomach tightened. We didn't fight. Not really. Raymond raised an eyebrow. Ben, come on. Everyone saw the tension. I didn't argue. What was the point? Perception was reality now. And apparently, someone decided I was part of this story. Convenient, isn't it? The betrayed husband becomes the prime suspect the minute something goes wrong. When we were finally allowed in, a nurse guided us to the ICU wing. Ethan wasn't conscious. I didn't care. I didn't want to see him. I didn't even want to hear his name. But Valerie did. The second the nurse mentioned the guy from last night, she perked up like someone had hit an internal switch. What room is he in? She asked too quickly. The nurse blinked, then pointed down the hall. 216. Only one of you can go in. Valerie didn't hesitate. She was already walking before the nurse finished speaking. And that's when I broke. You really need to see him that badly? I said, my voice sharper than I expected. You're not even going to pretend you're here for me? She stopped walking, turned halfway, and said, Ben, I just need to make sure Ethan's okay. He didn't deserve this. It wasn't what she said that killed me. It was how she said it. Like his name tasted familiar in her mouth. Like she'd said it 100 times before. Like maybe she'd whispered it. Not just last night, but for weeks, or months, or longer. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just a mistake. Not a drunken slip. Not a heat-of-the-moment thing that spiraled. This was a second life she had been living behind my back. And I hadn't even been invited to it. As she stepped into the room to see him, I stayed frozen in that hallway, breathing shallowly under flickering fluorescent lights, wondering how many times I'd missed the signs and whether I was now just a background character in someone else's love story. Or worse, the villain. I couldn't bring myself to sit in the waiting area. I just paced the hallway, back and forth, the kind of pacing that makes nurses look twice and security guards slowly unclip their radios. I didn't care. I was shaking, sweating, burning from the inside out. Not from guilt, no. From the realization that everything I thought was true about my marriage might have been rewritten without me knowing. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. No sign of her. I don't know what I expected her to do when she saw Ethan. Cry? Collapse? Realize her mistake and come running out, arms wide, saying, I was wrong. I was stupid. Let's go home. That only happens in movies, and even then, usually badly written ones. Then the door to room 216 opened. But it wasn't Valerie who came out. It was a detective. Tall, mid-40s, badge clipped to his belt like a quiet warning. He looked at me with that seasoned cop expression, not hostile, not kind, just observant. Ben Foster, he asked. I nodded. My voice got stuck somewhere behind my teeth. I'd like to ask you a few questions about last night. I sat in a windowless conference room with beige walls and a coffee machine that hadn't worked since the Obama administration. The detective, whose name was Grayson, kept his tone calm but firm. He wasn't accusing, not yet. But he was fishing. He asked me where I was when the incident happened. I told him. He asked if I'd had any contact with Ethan before the party. I told him I didn't even know who the hell Ethan was until I saw him practically draped over my wife in Raymond's garage. That's when he gave me the look. The one that says, I know something you don't. He flipped open a small notebook and said, Ethan claims he and your wife have known each other for over a year. They met during a marketing project she consulted on. He says they've been in an emotional relationship for at least 9 months. I blinked. Emotional? Grayson raised an eyebrow. That's the word he used. Says it never crossed the physical line until last night. Says they've been talking about ending things for months. But he didn't want to disrespect your marriage. I laughed, loud enough that it echoed. That's rich, I muttered. He didn't want to disrespect my marriage, so he had his hands around her waist in a garage at a dinner party? Grayson shrugged. I just report what people say. Doesn't mean I believe it. That's when I saw it. A folder on the desk. Slightly open. A photo poking out. It was Valerie, but not from last night. She was standing outside a cafe, in daylight, wearing sunglasses and smiling mid-laugh. And next to her, holding 2 cups of coffee and staring at her like she'd hung the moon, was Ethan. That wasn't taken last night. That was weeks ago. Why do you have surveillance photos? I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. Grayson didn't answer directly, just said, we're looking into Ethan for other reasons. You got caught in the net. I stared at the folder. Then I stared past it. Everything started to stretch and bend inside my mind. Things Valerie had said that didn't make sense suddenly had context. Weekend yoga retreats. Early morning client calls. The unlocked phone that she used to guard like a dragon before suddenly becoming too casual with it. Like she wanted me to stop checking. She wanted me to feel like nothing was happening. So I'd stop looking. So I wouldn't see the version of her that existed outside our marriage. Grayson closed the folder gently. Here's what you should know. Ethan says Valerie told him you were separated. That you hadn't slept in the same room in months. That you were controlling. That you threatened her if she left. I felt my blood drain. That's a lie. I figured, he said. Doesn't mean it won't complicate things. Especially if he ends up pressing charges. Charges? Against me? Grayson nodded once. He says he got jumped by someone last night. He doesn't remember their face, but he's implying it could have been you. Or someone you sent. And if Valerie supports that version, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Because I already knew. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. This was a slow erasure of who I was, replaced by a character she'd crafted. A villain in a story she told someone else. A story where she was the victim, and I was nothing more than a controlling husband she was desperate to escape. And now? Now that version was on paper. When I walked back into the apartment that night, everything was quiet. Too quiet. No lights on. No sounds from the TV. No Spotify playlist humming from the bedroom like usual. Valerie was sitting at the kitchen island, in the same clothes from the hospital, hair down, her face bare, stripped of all the polish and polish she used as armor. There was a glass of red wine in front of her, untouched, and her phone face down beside it, which by now I knew meant she was hiding something. She didn't look at me when I entered. She just said, softly, "How bad is it?" I didn't answer immediately. I went to the fridge, grabbed a water bottle, unscrewed the cap just to buy time. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't sadness. It was something colder. Calculating. I was no longer trying to understand her. I was trying to trap her, not out of revenge, but because I needed the truth laid out, once and for all. So I sat down across from her, leaned my arms on the counter, and said, "Val, how long has it been going on?" She looked up like I'd slapped her. "Ben, I told you." "No," I interrupted. "No more vague crap. Not, I didn't mean for it to happen. Not it just got out of hand. I'm not asking how you feel. I'm asking for a goddamn date. When did it start?" Her eyes darted left. That twitch she has when she lies. I knew it too well by now. "I don't know the exact day," she said. "Last fall, maybe? September?" I took a sip of water, watching her over the rim of the bottle. "That's interesting. Because Detective Grayson has a photo of you and Ethan outside a cafe in August. You're holding his coffee. You're laughing. He's staring at you like he's already in love." She blinked. "That can't be right." I set the bottle down hard enough for the sound to crack the air between us. "It is. August 9th. And according to Ethan, you told him we were separated. That I was threatening you. That we weren't even sleeping in the same room." Silence. A long one. Then, he misunderstood. "No, he didn't." I stood now, my palms flat on the counter. "You needed a version of me that justified what you were doing. So you built one. You told stories. You changed details. You turned me into this emotionally unstable guy who was just in the way." Her voice got small. "That's not fair." "Fair." I laughed bitterly. "You said you wanted a break last summer, remember? You wanted to reconnect with yourself. I supported you. I gave you space. You went to that cabin retreat with your sister." She flinched. I leaned in. "And that's the part that doesn't add up, Valerie. Because today, when I left the hospital, I stopped by Raymond's office. He showed me something." She looked up, slowly, eyes wide now. "Caught. Remember that dumb group photo they took at the end of the creative weekend last July? The one you said you didn't make it to because your rental car got a flat on the highway?" She nodded slowly. I could see her breathing change. I pulled out my phone, tapped it, turned the screen toward her. She was in the photo, standing next to Ethan, arm around his waist, grinning, sunlight on her face. I watched the moment it hit her. Not guilt, not yet, but exposure, like something sharp and hot passed over her skin. "I didn't mean to fall in love with him," she whispered. There it was, the final line. I had suspected it. Of course I had. But hearing her say it, plainly, like it was a sad little footnote in her journey of self-discovery, made me realize just how deep this went. She hadn't cheated once. She hadn't even cheated accidentally. She had methodically dismantled our marriage from the inside, brick by brick, all while smiling at me across the dinner table and telling me I seemed more confident lately. She stood up slowly, wine untouched, and walked toward the hallway. I stayed where I was, my fists curled so tight my nails bit into my palms. Before she disappeared down the corridor, she turned. And then she said something I will never forget. Something so perfectly cruel, I swear it had to be rehearsed. You were never supposed to find out. She didn't say another word that night. She slept in the guest room, or at least pretended to. I stayed in the living room, lights off, sitting on the couch with an old throw blanket and a cup of cold tea I never touched. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, letting the silence stretch into something sacred, something I owned. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I didn't slam drawers or throw things in a fit of rage. I packed methodically, not because I was afraid she'd stop me, but because I didn't need anything from her anymore. I took only what was mine. My old guitar, my books, my grandfather's watch, and the framed photo from my office. The one of me standing alone on a mountain trail in Colorado, taken by a stranger when I was 24 and convinced I'd never fall in love. Turns out that guy knew something I didn't. Valerie didn't try to stop me. She came into the hallway once, sleep in her eyes, mascara still smudged from the night before, and asked, "Where are you going?" I looked her dead in the face. Somewhere that doesn't smell like lies. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something else, an apology, a justification, some sad final plea. But I didn't give her the chance. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. That was 8 months ago. Since then, I've learned a few things. 1. Healing isn't linear. Some mornings I still wake up and forget she's not next to me. And for a split second, my heart clenches like it used to. But then I breathe. And I remember, she's not part of my life anymore. She's just part of the story. 2. Starting over isn't about replacing what you lost. It's about rebuilding without needing it. I moved into a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. The walls aren't covered in curated Pinterest quotes, and no one here is pretending to be anything. It's quiet, and it's honest. 3. Not everyone who smiles at you loves you, and not everyone who breaks you does it because you failed. Some people ruin things just because they're broken, and hurting others is the only way they feel alive. That's not your fault. That's their disease. But the most important thing I learned? I never needed her to complete me. I've started painting again. Something I gave up years ago because she said it made the house smell like turpentine. I've reconnected with my sister, the one I hadn't seen in 4 years because Valerie always made excuses not to visit. And just last month, I went on my first real date in nearly a year, with someone who didn't try to control the menu, who laughed at my bad jokes, and who didn't flinch when I told her what I'd been through. She just nodded and said, "Sounds like you finally walked out of someone else's prison." Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I didn't get revenge. I didn't burn her clothes, or destroy her reputation, or post screenshots online. I just left her with the one thing she couldn't manipulate: silence. She doesn't know where I live. I didn't leave a forwarding address. No messy divorce scandal. No final text. I disappeared from her story, but kept writing my own. And for the first time in a long, long time, I like how this chapter begins.